Box fighting is the single most important aspect of building. More important than build fighting, more important than taking height. If there's one thing you need to learn, it's how to properly box fight. Without it, you'll struggle to find time to heal and struggle to finish your fights before third parties have time to show up. So here's how you start. Your opponent will have to try and take your wall to apply pressure and eliminate you. Even those opponents who like to stay up and spray will have to come down eventually. Usually if you start a fight with full materials, they will run out of ammo before you run out of builds. So when they do attack your wall, this is when you make an edit to be able to damage them. But which edit to make is the question. The answer is always different, but the only way to figure it out is to first understand these first two fundamentals of peeking: peeker's advantage and right-hand advantage. Right-hand advantage abuses the fact that Fortnite is a third-person shooter. Since the position of the camera is to the right of your character, peeking around the right side of something will allow you to see and therefore shoot the opponent before they can see you. Peeker's advantage, on the other hand, has nothing to do with Fortnite being third person. All online shooter games are subject to Peeker's advantage because Peeker's advantage instead abuses the fact that the game is online. If you were to play any first person shooter and peek around a wall, you would expect you and your opponent to be able to see each other at the same time. And that is true, but only if you're playing locally on the same system without the internet. As soon as you switch to playing online, there's an added delay between the moment you peek around the corner and when the other player sees it on their end. The delay does increase as either player's ping increases, but even if both players are on 0 ping, there will still be some delay. Because of this, whichever player is moving into a peak the fastest will be able to see the other player first. Now that you understand these principles, it should make sense why some edits are used much more than others. If someone is trying to take your wall, you'll want to make an edit that allows you to use both right-hand advantage and peeker's advantage as much as possible. For example, window edits are one of the best because they allow you to run full speed to the right and peek around the window, maximizing both right hand and peeker's advantage. The top right triangle edit is also amazing because although the slanted edge takes away a little bit from the right hand advantage, you can jump while running to the right, giving you an even greater peeker's advantage than the window does. Choosing which of these to use depends mostly on where you and your opponent are within the boxes. If you and the opponent are on the right side, you wouldn't want to do the top right triangle because they would immediately be able to see you and shoot you. You would want to use the right window instead. But if they're instead crouched behind the cone, you wouldn't want to use a window because you wouldn't be able to see them through a window. In that case, it would be perfect for a top right triangle edit. If you're not sure what peek to make, most of the time you'll usually be good using one of those two options. So those are what you should learn and master first. A common exception though is when your opponent stays right up against your wall in one of the corners. In this case, the top right triangle edit won't work because it would either let them into your box if they're on the right, or you wouldn't be able to shoot them if they're on the left. And none of the window edits are positioned well to allow you to have a good shot on them. So in this case, you should use one of the bottom triangle edits. If they're on the right, use the left triangle. If they're on the left, use the right triangle. This allows you to shoot their lower body without them being able to see you. So your most important edits to peek from will be the triangle edits and window edits. But regardless of which of the edits you choose, how you peek should be the same. You should always first make the edit, then move into the peek and shoot as soon as you have a shot, and then reset. Edit, peek and shoot, reset. Edit, peek and shoot, reset, as quickly as possible. Just practice that over and over, first at slower speeds and then increasingly faster until you can do it at full speed. Congratulations, you can now successfully defend yourself in a box fight. You'll be able to damage the opponent without taking return damage. But once you damage them, they'll move away and create their own box to start healing from. That's the time you have to get aggressive to be able to actually win fights. Playing defense is only half the battle. So now let's look at offense. When you're trying to stop an opponent from healing, you have two options. The first option is to try and replace their build piece, which will allow you to then edit it. This requires you to break the wall with any weapon or your pickaxe, and then select your wall and then pressing place. The easier way is to start holding place before you even break the wall, so that as soon as you press your wall button, it will place automatically. Once you have the wall, you choose an edit to make in the same way you did on defense. Now replacing a build piece might seem simple, but there's a bit more that goes into it than you might think. In the past, whenever a build piece broke, if multiple players tried to place a new piece in that spot, it was simple. Whoever had the lowest ping would get it first because the request gets to the server the fastest. But that was way too big of an advantage, so Epic made an update to make it more fair. Nowadays, whenever a build piece is broken, nobody can place a new piece in that spot for 150 milliseconds. During that time, all player requests to place a build are held. Then, at the end of the 150 milliseconds, it randomly picks one of those players to accept the request from. This way, higher ping players still have a chance to replace lower ping players' builds, at least in theory. The only problem is there's a delay equal to your ping that happens every time you switch between your weapons and your blueprint. Ping is just the measurement of how long it takes for information to go from your system to the server and back. So if you're the person breaking the wall to begin with and you have, let's say, 50 milliseconds ping, once you break the wall, it will take 50 milliseconds for you to take out your blueprint, and then another 25 for the build request to reach the server. So that means you only really have 75 milliseconds to switch from your weapon to your blueprint, otherwise you won't ever take their wall. 75 milliseconds is only this long, so you really have to get your timing down. The higher your ping, the more perfect your timing has to be to replace builds. And if your ping is 100 milliseconds or more, it's actually impossible even if you have perfect timing. So in that case, to stop opponents from healing, you'll have to use the second option. option, phasing. Whenever a build is placed, if a player is standing where the build would go, they have to be moved to one side or the other, and the player will always be moved to whichever side they are closest to. Phasing is taking advantage of that 150 milliseconds build lockout after a build is broken to make sure you're closer to the inside of the box when the new build is placed. If you're just standing next to the wall, holding forward trying to break through, you won't get far enough in before the new build is placed. This is because you're standing still and have no momentum. If instead you start from further back and time it so that the build breaks as soon as you reach it, you will have enough momentum to make it in before the build is replaced. Unlike build replacing, phasing is completely independent of ping. You could have 300 ping and still phase through builds. But this doesn't just mean replace builds if you're on low ping and phase through if you're on high ping. Which of the two you should do will depend on many factors, but the most important is how big of a health difference there is between you and your opponent. Phasing in is the most aggressive option, but the downside of phasing is that it can give the opponent the chance to shoot you first. Now if you're on full health and the opponent has 30 HP, this doesn't matter. Even if they shoot you with their shotgun for maximum damage, you'll still be able to eliminate them immediately after, so oftentimes it's worth it. But if you instead have 100 HP, then phasing becomes more risky as they could one-shot you. In that case, you would usually rather replace their builds and try to take them out more safely, even if it might take slightly longer. Of course, all of this will change with the conditions of the match as well. Maybe you're fighting in zone and you don't have white heals, and so it's worth it to take the risk of dying to finish the fight quicker. Or in the first example, if you know the opponent's almost out of materials, you might still just replace the wall instead of phasing in, because you know the opponent can't run away anyway, so there's no rush. The point is, regardless of your situation, you'll need to know how to do both build replacing and phasing. When it comes to offense, the most important principle is to keep as much health advantage as possible. Yes, that does mean to try to not take damage from the opponent, but just as important as not taking damage is to prevent the opponent from healing. You have to at least keep up enough pressure so that they don't have the opportunity to heal up. If you're too scared to aggress and in the process let them replenish 50 shield, that's the same as letting them hit you for 50 damage. At least that's how you should think about it. When you have a big health advantage, being passive is oftentimes worse than being too aggressive. Box fighting is the main form of fighting in build mode, so of course it gets more in depth, but the main things you need to master first are quickly editing, peeking, and resetting, with both window edits and triangle edits. Once you have that down, in the next video I can start showing you more advanced techniques and how to quickly improve.